guys, welcome to another video, and in this video I'm going to explain the use of Handlebars templating engine. So templates are used in almost all of the applications in which there is any user interface involved, and templates make it very easy for us to combine the input data with a predefined wireframe or blueprint of any content. So for example, we have a set of data for different users and we want to show the information of all those users on the user interface by providing a suitable message. Then instead of creating the message by creating a loop and iterating over all the users, we can simply create a template and then we can use a templating engine to combine the template text with the input to produce the required output. Alright, so let's move on to the code. Over here there is a HTML page, and in this page I have included the code for the handlebars library in an external JS file, and then there is jQuery and there is some test data which I will be using to explain an example. There is a function onload which will be called when the window content is loaded, and there is an object which contains two properties for the first name and last name. Okay, now when we work with handlebars, then it is always wise to store the template content in an external script tag, because the script tags are not rendered on the page, but to also prevent them prevent them to be interpreted by the browser as script, we need to supply a type which the browser is not going to identify as script. So as you can see, the type is handlebars template, so the browser is simply going to ignore the contents, and it will not try to attempt to execute the code written inside. And apart from the type, we can also give it an ID so that we can get the reference of this tag, and then we can get the contents. So the ID is simple template. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a template for this obj which has first name and last name, and I'm going to write a message that the first name is first name and the last name is last name. Now the thing to note over here is that the name of the token should correspond to the name of the property whose value we want to put over here in place of this token. So I have used exactly the same names as the properties. The values are first name and last name. Now the only thing which remains is to set the value of the combined template into this div in the body. To do that, first we need to compile the template, and to do that we have to use the handlebars templating engine. So there is a method in the handlebars which is called as compile, and the compile method simply returns a function which will accept an argument of the input information which we want to combine with the template. Now the compile method or the compile function accepts the argument of the template text. So to get the template text, we simply have to first get the reference of the script tag which contains the template tag using its ID, and then when we have the compiled template, Then we can simply set the inner HTML of the div, and we need to send the obj as an argument, and that's it. Let's see if this works or not. So as you can see, the message is printed over this screen as the first name is John and the last name is Doe, but instead of the token names, the compiled template has replaced the tokens with the actual value contained inside the properties. Now if I replace the value inside the first name, then on refreshing the page the output will also update. Alright, so this was a very simple example. Now we have a JSON data. So there is basically an array with different elements, and all the elements are identical uh, with respect to the properties, but the data is different. The content of the properties is different. So there is an ID, there is a first name, last name, email, gender, and IP address. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a table out of this information. So let's suppose that we are not using any templating engine. Then in order to do that, we need to create some kind of loop in the code, or we need to use jQuery's each method, and then we would need to iterate over every single object in this JSON array. But this task can be easily done by using the Handlebars engine. Alright, so I'm just going to use the same type but with a different ID, and let's call it table template. Okay, so now there is a table, and then let's have a table row for the heading, and let's just first have the ID, and then we can have the first name, and then we can have the last name, and then let's also have the email ID. Okay, now this is the header. Now what we need to do is we need to create, or we need to generate a row for every single element contained inside this array, and to do that we need to use the pound each token. So what will happen is the handlebars code will execute, or it will iterate over all the elements, and it will execute the code or the template content contained inside this each block for each element. And with the each token we also need to supply the name of the object from where the handlebars is going to read the information about all the elements. So let's just call it, okay, let's call it date contacts for now, because all of these are basically contacts. There's a first name, last name, and email, and then there's gender. So let's name it contacts, and inside it we can create the template for the individual rows corresponding to each contact. Now all we need to do is we need to write the tokens for all the properties. Then there is the last name, and then there is the email. Alright, now let's just repeat the same steps for the simple template, and I'm going to rename it as table template, and we also need to give the ID of the second script tag. And okay, let's see if it's working or not. Actually, we also need to give the input. So in this mockdata.js file, I am creating a property in the window itself, and the name of the property is data. Now this loop is going to read the information of all the elements from the contacts property of the object that we are supplying in as an input argument. So let's create a property named as contacts, and then the data will be fetched from this data property of window. And let's see if it works or not. So as you can see, there is a table automatically generated, and we simply created a template for the table, and then we simply compiled the template, and after that we merged the template with the input information, and let's call this entire information as contacts. So this is the very simple way in which we can use handlebars. Now so many beginners have the question like, what is the actual use of templates when we are working with dynamic applications? So I'm going to give you an example. Let's say that this is the information of all the contacts, and we are reading them from the server, and we also want to give the user the ability to edit or delete any contact. So let's suppose that we want to give an action to be performed for all of the contacts, and let's name the action as delete. So what we want to do is we want to provide the user with an action of deleting any contact, an individual contact that he wants. But right now this is a simple text, and we want this in the form of a link. So I'm going to use an anchor for that purpose, and that's it. Now the thing is, this delete link is not doing anything. So we want to wire up the delete this delete link with an event which is going to delete the corresponding contact. Like for example, if I click on the delete link which is in front of the ninth contact, then I want this contact to be deleted from the database. So in order to do that, first we need to give every delete link a state of its own. So let's give an id attribute to every delete link, and the id would be the same which is stored in the contact list. So as you can see, now all of the delete buttons are different, and every delete link is having a separate id attribute inside it, and it is a very good way to distinguish between all the links and to check which delete link has been pressed. So as you can see, this one has the data id as 1, and this second one has the data id as 2. Now what we can do is we can simply use jQuery to bind events with all the delete links. Let's give it another attribute, because assuming that there are going to be more links on the page, so it is always better to assign a common attribute to the uh, to the buttons which are going to perform the same action but with different attributes. So let's name it data delete contact, and in the click I'm just going to send in a function as an argument, and we can fetch the value of the ID using the current scope or the this keyword. And then all we need to do is we need to paste the attribute name which we are using to hold the ID, and that's it. After that we can simply call any ajax code to post this information onto the server to delete the contact. Okay, so let's see if we are getting the value of the ID attribute or not. So when I click on, let's say, this delete link, then the code has been stopped at this point and the value of ID is 30. So we can use this ID to send to the server to delete this contact, and then we can later on we can refresh this entire table by either reconstructing the entire thing or by just removing this specific row, this row with the 30 ID. So as you can see, the Handlebars templating engine is very simple to use, but it is very effective and it is very powerful in creating very complex views for the end user using a variety of information. So that was the introductory part, and there are a lot more things that we can do with handlebars, like we can have nested loops and we can have conditions inside the tokens. But for now, I think that I'm going to end this video and I'm going to upload another video with the advanced stuff. So thank you for listening to me and for watching this video, and have a good day.